This Renters' Rights Act might actually hurt the very people it's supposed to help. Rental listings have dropped by over 25% in some of the UK cities since the start of the talks of the Renters' Rights Bill. The government says the act is there to protect renters, but actually it's driving rents up. There's been a lot of noise online about the Renters' Rights Act, people saying it's finally giving tenants power and others warning that it's going to push landlords to sell up. We've read your comments, we've seen the arguments, and today I'm sitting down with our lettings manager, James, to break down what this act really means for both landlords and tenants. This is something that we've been preparing for a while now, and for anyone who's not clear on what the key changes in the Renters' Rights Act are, let's break those down briefly. Number one is the abolishment of no-fault eviction, so there will be no more Section 21 notices, and landlords will no longer be able to evict tenants simply by giving the Section 21 for no reason whatsoever, and instead, landlords will need to rely on the new or reworked possession grounds, which is the Section 8 notice, in order to recover the property. Number two is the tenancy structure reform. So this is the end of fixed assured short-hold tenancies, your most common ASTs, and instead we are moving to a single periodic tenancy model, which is essentially rolling contracts. So for tenants, this is greater security, which means they can stay longer unless the landlord has a valid ground. For landlords, this just means less certainty about when they can actually regain their property. Ultimate flexibility for tenants, where they can literally move in today and give their 2 months notice. Number three is rental increases, bidding and deposit. So rent increases will be limited to once per year, and you have to wait 12 months of owning the property and having the tenant in before you can do that. The practice of rent bidding, which doesn't happen around the UK everywhere anyway, but this is where several tenants are bidding against each other, that's going to be prohibited. Landlords and agents must publish an asking rent and adhere to it. Number four, tenant protections and rights. Tenants gain a right to request a pet, and landlords cannot unreasonably refuse. So landlords are prevented from blanket bans on tenants, on benefits, or with children, or solely for those reasons. And then there's strengthened standards and enforcement for property conditions, and this is about the decent home standards, which already exists in the public rental sector, so council houses, but now it's going to take action in the private rented sector under AWAB's law. And AWAB was a young lad that unfortunately passed away due to mold in the property. And not to put this point in place too much, but the irony is that that was in a public sector house. It was in a council house, not adhering to the decent home standards. But ultimately, it's not that they got it wrong why this has come in, it's about us all adhering to a new standard. And finally, new enforcement, redress and data tools. There's been an introduction of a mandatory redress scheme or ombudsman for the private rented sector, where ultimately as landlords we need to be a part of it, and the creation of a private rented sector database to hold information on tenants, landlords and local authorities. And the idea of this is to increase integrity and transparency of how our landlords and tenants are operating in the sector. There's also going to be stronger enforcement powers, which is increased penalties for non-compliance, expanded rent repayment orders, RROs, and improved ability for local authorities to act. So James, since the Act started coming in, obviously you've been spending a lot of time talking to our investors, landlords and tenants. Yeah. What's been the general consensus and concerns of investors so far?
It's been pretty positive, to be fair. I think a lot of our investors here at Aspire understand why it's happening. So more of a case of this end-to-end service that we have, it's really bolstering what we do as a company. I think the biggest question that we've had, strangely, isn't connected to the inner workings of the Act. It's really been landlords asking who registers what, with what ombudsman, what redress scheme. Is it us? Is it the landlord? Obviously, us as an agency, we are part of an ombudsman and we are part of a redress scheme as we should be. Now it's a case that landlords have to apply themselves, and that has been one frequently asked question on the landlord side. As for tenants, it's more about the security of the tenancy with the rights under the assured periodic tenancies. Right now, a landlord has the right to dissolve a tenancy in any way under a Section 21, and even right through to, you have cases where death of a tenant and it will completely dissolve then. What an assured periodic tenancy it's very similar to the social housing tenancies where they become a lifetime tenancy. So you will have a right to live there for as long as you want, under a case of you have not broken any rules. So that is the main question I've had from tenants is what's going to happen? How will my tenancy end? How will I go about renewing? I want the security of a fixed term. Yes, we can't offer that, but it actually becomes a lifetime tenancy, so you do have that security there.
That's interesting. So from a tenant's point of view, they can still get security.
Yeah.
And do we have to give that as a landlord then?
Yeah, so under the Act, right now, prior to the Act, it is a case of you have different avenues where a tenancy can terminate. The only time now the Act is in force that a tenancy can be terminated is a case that the tenant is in the wrong. That is damages, that is a case where they've not been paying rent, there's antisocial behaviour orders. They're the only times where a landlord can actively go under the grounds under a Section 8. There is different parts of the Section 8. You've got mandatory grounds where in a court of law a judge does have the mandatory grounds to seek possession for the landlord, and they are those type of things. You do have other elements, so in a case where a landlord wants to sell the property, we'll find a lot more landlords, if they are selling up, will be selling with tenant in situ. So your tenancy will still be active and it will just move on to a new landlord or new agent. You'll be served a Section 3 notice stating who your new agent, new landlord is, and things will continue as normal. If the landlord is wanting to sell with vacant possession or has a reasoning behind needing to sell, say it's an inheritance, a family member's passed away and it was a rental and they do need to sell, and unfortunately without a tenant in situ, they can then still serve a Section 8 notice under grounds 1, which would be for just the vacancy of the property. It would still have to run through a court, and once that is granted, that landlord can actually re-let the property for 12 months. So it wouldn't be a case where they would go under that ground to avoid the Section 21 ideology. It would be a case that they would go under that ground and have to do it, otherwise they are stuck with a vacant property for 12 months.
So you mentioned about, like, as a landlord, I have to register to an ombudsman now. 2 questions on that. Number 1, is there a cost involved to that? Go on, what's the...
We don't know the cost yet. The Ombudsman service hasn't fully been set up. So that's within this 6-month grace period that we are having. The Act is law, but it will come into fruition around spring next year. So that's around about April time, it is assumed. Within that time, they are building the Ombudsman. The Ombudsman will then it will be a fee, it will be an annual fee. Just like us as agents, we have to pay an annual fee to be part of our Ombudsman. And that will go towards supporting the Ombudsman service to ensure that properties are kept within a boundary. Think very much of selective licensing laws. You've got areas within Leeds where we're based, Sheffield, all over the country that have selective licensing, and the landlord will have to apply for a license in that area, regardless.
Yeah.
Similar idea, you're part of a register, you're part of a redress scheme, you're part of an ombudsman service, and it's so it can be monitored a lot more closely.
So again, the second question then is, obviously it's the landlord's responsibility, but as an agent, what can we do to support investors and landlords to get that done?
Okay. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I don't know, we need to put something in place. I've had the question a lot from landlords, do I have to apply? Can the agent apply for me? If it is anything in line with certain elements with the Housing Act as it stands right now, there's certain parts that us as an agent cannot do, and it has to be the legal owner of the property. I don't know if this will fall under that. If it is, so selective licensing, going back to that, is a very good example. The agent cannot apply for a selective license on behalf of the landlord. If they follow that ruling with the Ombudsman service and the redress schemes, the landlord would have to apply. However, us as an agent, once it's out there, we will do as much research as humanly possible, and we will be there to guide you through that. We can put together some videos just like this, where we explain how you do the application and what you will see on that screen and what we need to put on our system to make sure you're compliant and level.
Well, one of the moves that I made a few years ago is to get management agents, and obviously now we own an agency, but even before, and it was just such a weight off of our shoulders because the amount of compliance that has come in is absolutely insane. I making this number up, let's say 20% of people out there are still self-managing. Mm-hmm. Most of those aren't doing it legally now, let alone what's going to be coming in. What are the potential penalties? So say I own 5 properties, I don't have a management agent, we're fine, we've got good tenants, you know, all of that stuff. What happens if I get caught and I'm not ticking all the boxes?
So it can be initial penalty of £7,000 all the way up to imprisonment. It depends if you're a repeat offender and how many properties it lies with. If it's just the one case and it is a genuine mistake and you've missed it, you can have that £7,000 penalty for not meeting rules and regulations. Just think of it like gas safety certificates in the ICRs. You don't have a gas cert, you don't have an ICR, you are non-compliant. It will be the exact same thing as with the Ombudsman service and being on the redress scheme. If you're not in there, you will have penalties to face. You won't get away with it, but if you are a repeat offender and you're just burying your head in the sand, it can face imprisonment.
Honest opinion here, not just for the camera. I've got my opinion on this. Do you think ultimately this is good for tenants?
No.
Okay, why?
So, I don't know if you remember the Landlord and Tenant Act 2019. Mm-hmm. So, to give a briefing on that is when agents could charge fees. So, we could charge fees to a tenant, and that could be anything, just like we do a landlord. We could charge for referencing, we could charge for guarantors, we could charge for tenancy amendments, we could charge for anything and everything. And yes, they brought in the Landlord and Tenant Act to help make it more viable for tenants, just like the Renters' Rights Act has done this time round. But what we saw with the Landlord and Tenant Act 2019, agents' fees went up, landlords' fees went up. There was loopholes on how things could be done within certain elements of things, certain fees that you could still charge. And actually, in the long run, rents went up tenfold. Because at the end of the day, agents were charging landlords bigger setup fees. They were charging landlords bigger management fees. In order for landlords to still get that yield, to still be able to be a landlord, the rents went up, but the whole market went up. So you didn't have comparable evidence. As in a case, you didn't have a house on one street that was 700, but then another one was up at 900. Everything leveled up. This will do the same. Agents inevitably will be charging more because they have more to do. Their jobs become more risky. They have more admin to do. So will this then become, do they need more staffing in their offices to be able to cover compliance areas? Do they need to have specialist training in certain elements? That all has a cost, which will then, unfortunately, be put onto the landlord to help cover. But then the landlord, in order to be a landlord and be able to cover those costs, they will charge a higher rent.
Yeah.
And that's what will happen. Yes, we have within the Act a case of we cannot create bidding wars. We could do before. You know, you could have a tenant come forward and offer £20 above rent, £30, £40, you can have them bidding against each other. We can't do that now. What will happen, an agent will literally just market at a higher rent, but all the agents will. So you won't have a choice to go, well, a house down the road is £200 a month cheaper, so I'm going to go for that. All the houses will go up, just like the Landlord and Tenant Act.
I think, here's my sort of out there thought process. I think this is all a move to institutionalize investment. I remember the World Economic Forum, it's a few years back, where the famous quote came out, you'll own nothing and be happy about it. And you think about Legal & General, Lloyds Bank, Aviva, all of these build to rent stuff. And you see it, you must have seen it in Leeds, where like a 1-bed flat on the outskirts of Leeds is £1,200. Yeah. In an area where a 3-bed house is £800 a month.
Yeah.
And I think we're moving towards that. And so I agree. I think it's terrible for tenants. And there's so many tenants going, oh, finally, about time we got some rights. So like, no, if you've got a shit landlord that is genuinely leaving mold in your property, that isn't doing those checks and everything in between, they're already an illegal landlord. Yeah. Like, that's not suddenly changed. It's just the timescales have really changed. The fixed contracts, obviously, that's a change. Mm-hmm. But in general, you've got somebody that is deliberately what is it they call them? Slumlord, if you like. They're running it illegally, and they will likely continue it illegally. And so my big worry is, number one, I think it's all a facade. What government that is absolutely broke already is suddenly actually going to be able to do this? It's like the selective licensing. Yeah. And it's like, how many of our properties in selecting licensing areas got checked as a percentage? I bet it's less than 5%.
Yeah.
And it's like, great, so we had to pay that licensing fee for nobody to check whether we were doing it right or not. And I guarantee what happened is there'd be people in there that didn't even have the license and still didn't do it. So yeah, I think the big picture is that. I think shit landlords will still be shit, good landlords will still be good. I think we'll follow the book of the law. And you're right, It will not increase the standard of properties because a good landlord's still reacting quickly to damp, boiler, what all of those things. So we'll carry on being good. And the only person, I think landlords hurt short term, next 3 to 6 months, whilst we deal with the transition. I think letting agents will lose money short term because we won't know how to price accordingly for things like that. And then I think tenants win short term until list prices. And that's exactly it. If you thought, I could get 700 to 800 for this, I'm not sure though, depends. Well, you're putting it at 800. And it's like everyone's going to do that. And so I genuinely believe 1 year from now, we've got the exact same standards property. And I think prices are going to go up more in the next 12 months than they have in the last 24. That's my prediction.
I think you've really hit the nail on the head with one point that you made there as well. You talk about the slum landlord. You've got landlords actively in areas right now in selective licensing zones that don't have the license. They've never applied for the license. And they are just literally going under the radar. You will then get landlords that will do the exact same thing with the ombudsman services, with the redress schemes, and they will advertise on Facebook Marketplace, they will advertise on Gumtree, they will advertise on these platforms where it's a case they're trying to fly under the radar. They don't want an agent, they don't want to highlight that they've got a property where they've got a tenant in there, and they will then offer the cheaper rents because they're not paying to be in this redress, they're not paying all this other stuff. So your most vulnerable of tenants will be then going to these people and being like, perfect, I can get a house where if I go on Rightmove, Zoopla, on the market, £700, £800, but I can get it for £550 from so-and-so, so-and-so on Facebook Marketplace, I'm going to go with that. But they're the ones that won't have gas safety certificates, that won't have EICRs. The landlords won't be on any form of redress scheme or ombudsman service. They won't be getting maintenance done, they'll have damp, they'll have mould, they won't have any HHSRS in place, but they'll be scared to speak up. Because if they speak up and report them to the council, or report them to any form of governing body, they automatically then have to enter the higher market. It costs them money. So again, it goes back on them costs.
I think the other thing is whenever there's fear, the market slows. And so if there's fear in the market, there'll be less new landlords for 3 to 6 months. There might be some landlords that go, that's it, final shot. Think of the old boy that's owned them for 40 years, that's got 56, I'm done. That's the straw that broke the camel's back for me. And now there's less supply in the market, which again, the renters still need them, but now there's less supply and they've kicked out all the tenants in the meantime. So now the price of rents go up even further. And I had a couple of tenants going, yeah, but doesn't that mean cheap houses then? Because more stock. So we're 4 million houses behind where we need to be right now. That's not going to impact it. And number two, as a tenant, I don't want to be rude, but stop acting like the reason you're renting rather than buying is because of a 10 grand fluctuation in purchase price. So I think it's going to be terrible for tenants.
I think what tenants are forgetting at the minute as well is we've sampled this market very, very minimal and people don't realise. Lockdown. What happened? Tenants, there was no movement in the market. Tenants weren't moving. So all of a sudden, those properties where tenants who would naturally vacate because they've bought a property remain tenanted. The supply and demand really threw out. There wasn't any properties in the rental market really readily available. And those that were, you would get, honestly, about 50 inquiries for it. You'd have to minimise viewings because you had that much interest. And you were getting the bidding wars. You were getting people paying over the odds for the rents, which naturally dragged up the rental values in the areas. So they were outpricing themselves. Yeah. So we've sampled this, and I feel like this is what is to come.
Yeah. Overall, I think it's great for landlords. I think, yes, it adds some red tape, which is a ball ache. I think genuinely, if you think about your additional costs as a landlord, let's say it cost you another £1,500 a year, just as an example of increased management costs and maybe the ombudsman costs, because everything else as a good landlord you would be doing anyway. But how much more rent will this get in? I genuinely would not be shocked if it's 50, 100, 150, depending on the area. But let's just say for every 1,500, it gets you another £50 a month coming in. So a £600 return for another 1,500 investment, which ironically is a ridiculous return on investment of almost 50%. I think for me, I'm kind of glad I don't have to deal with it, and it's your problem. No offense. Apart from registering for the ombudsman.
Yeah.
I think one of the best moves I made is, and for fellow investors that are on here, is that we focus on making the money to invest in property and then outsource to the professionals. I think that's really important when it comes to compliance. And I've never seen a business with so much compliance in compared to lettings. And I don't know if there is any, maybe insurance. I don't know, but
Yeah, you would probably align us with insurance, but we don't have the FCA.
yeah,
That is all it is. The amount of stuff that we have to research, learn, implement and put into practice is really high. And then, yes, you do have landlords that will quibble about a percentage within a fee, and it does, it's a bit like we do have to do a lot for that 1% difference.
Yeah. I think this will be a very interesting time. Shorthand, bad for tenants, good for landlords, but we have to get through the other side. And I think that is where my mindset is at. For those of you that are looking to invest and you're thinking, well, is now a bad time to get involved? No, that's not the case, but you do need experts around you. One of the big moves that I made when scaling my portfolio is to create an end-to-end service. And I actually created Aspire Portfolio for me and Dan, my business partner, as an investor, so that I could have team around me to facilitate all of the things, including the massive compliance of managing the property, and outsource that to other people. And then we started doing it for people like you. So if you are sat there with 50K or more to invest, but you need to get it right and get it compliant, then we might be able to help build your portfolio for the rest of 2025 and 2026. If you want to put portfolio in the comments, I'll send you a link and you can book in a free one-to-one strategy session with me or one of the team about building your fully compliant, ready for the Renters' Rights Act in 2026 and beyond. So put portfolio in, we'll send you the link and we'd love to have a chat. For those of you specifically in West and South Yorkshire, the management team would love to help you. And this is if you've got an existing agent already or you're self-managing and you just need some guidance. In the description, I'm going to put a link to our letting agency website. If you want to click on there and fill in an inquiry form, no pressure to become a client or anything like that. Right now, we just want landlords to be well educated. So feel free to go on there, specifically in West and South Yorkshire, the regions that we cover. We want to give you some one-on-one advice. So I really look into this mindset that if in doubt, zoom out. The reality is there is nothing that could come up in property that's going to make it a bad investment. Investing in property has happened since the Doomsday Book in 1066, and it has doubled every 10 years since then. And there's never been a 10-year period ever where property prices have gone down. And so these small micro situations will always create fear and opportunity in the market. And it's those that take action on this that get the best opportunities. And if you're sat there ready to take advantage of these changes and you've got 50,000 or more to start investing in your property portfolio, put portfolio in the comments. I'll send you a link and we'll have a chat on the phone. I hope you got value from this video. If you're not subscribed already, make sure to hit subscribe and the notification bell. And if you did get benefit from this video, hit the like button and I'll see you in the next video.